Hello, hello, and welcome to another book launch livecast from Ignite Press. We're excited today because we have with us Ruth Rathblott, and she has written a phenomenal book to incorporate her life story and lessons that she's discovered in regards to inclusion and diversity. And this couldn't be more timely. So we're going to be bringing Ruth on in just a second. Before we go there, just want to let you know that at Ignite Press, we're here to help you get your story out and to get your message out to the world. And if we can be a resource for you, you can always reach out to us at ignitepress.us. That's ignitepress.us, not the .com, so that we can do that. So I mentioned Ruth Rathblott. In fact, her book single-handedly is out today, Learning to Unhide and Embrace Connection. You can pick this up at Amazon right now. So I'm going to bring Ruth on, and Ruth is an expert in inclusion and diversity. She's a TEDx speaker. She speaks all over the place. She's also an award-winning nonprofit leader. And I'm going to let her tell you her incredible story, or at least parts of it, as we bring her on. So Ruth, how are you today?
I'm great. This is an amazing day. I actually looked in the mirror earlier, Everett, and I'm like, you did it. Like, I did it. I wrote a book.
Heck yeah. Not just wrote a book, but published and launched a book. I have it on good authority. It's doing terrifically on Amazon right now. But we don't want to spill all those beans. So Ruth, tell us, first, this has been a long time in the making. When did you start? First, when did you think of writing this book, and when did you start writing the book?
It's funny. I think my father and my friends would say I started thinking about this book probably 4 or 5 years ago. There was something in me that wanted to write a book, and probably like most people, you have an idea and then you don't do a lot with it. And so I got serious about the book after I did the TEDx, and I reached out to my National Speakers Association community and I said, who is the best person to go to help me write a book? And because I had never written a book before. And so in December of 2021, I reached out to Kathy Fayok, and she coached me through the book process.
Speaking of, Kathy just commented, actually, what an amazing book. And I already have my copy. And by the way, if anyone is watching this, feel free to throw questions or comments in the chat roll. I would be happy to bring it up. But Kathy also said that you did it, that you did the hard work to make this happen. And Kathy does a phenomenal job, and I'm glad that she's here. Tell us, first tell us about you. Let's get into your background, and then we'll dive into the book.
Sure. So I am a longtime nonprofit executive. I thought that I was going to spend my entire career in nonprofits, and I focused mostly on helping underserved youth get resources and access to opportunities. And a couple of years ago, I was talking about diversity and inclusion, and the subject of disability wasn't coming up on either panels I was on or in conversations I was in. And so I had this kind of moment of, well, how come disability is not included? And it shifted me to thinking about that, which is disability part of diversity? And that kind of steamrolled me into this next launch of my career, which is professional speaking and consulting, and now adding author to it.
All right. So we've got maybe the comment logs blowing up. So I'll bring those up as questions come up and that type of thing. So your inspiration, you've been seeing that disabilities and physical differences are not even part of the inclusion conversation, which is shocking, right?
Because for so many reasons. Yeah, it's shocking.
Yeah, it's just shocking. Now, as you talk to more and more people about this, what are the reactions that you get from people when you highlight this point? Because boy, there's other hot buttons in the last couple of years besides disabilities and physical differences.
Absolutely. No, and I think I think that's a two-part question. I think the first piece is, it's shocking because disability is the largest minority group that there is. It cuts across, and it cuts across all lines. It's true intersectionality. And when I say it's the largest minority group, 1 in 4 U.S. adults have a disability. And that can be anything from visible differences to invisible differences. And so when we think about that as a space, we think about, wow, okay, there are a lot of people that we should be talking about. And the second piece to that is the intersectionality, because disability doesn't discriminate. It cuts across all lines. You can be any race, any gender, any sexual orientation, any age. You can have a disability from birth, or you can acquire one, or you can be someone who's taking care of someone with a disability. And so as I started looking at that and talking to people, I got 2 reactions. One was, wait, why would disability be part of this conversation? Because to your point, there are other hot topic buttons and really important work streams. There's the work stream around race, which is super important, especially with the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. So there's a racial equity and justice piece that's super important. There's also a gender component and lens of diversity that we need to think about. And there's a sexual orientation piece. So those are 3 critical work streams. And I absolutely believe there's enough room at the table to include disability in these conversations. So that's one reaction is, well, why is disability it shouldn't be part of diversity? And then the second is almost a sigh of relief that people say it's about time to talk about visible and invisible differences, especially given what we've all been through over the last 2.5 years with COVID. The mental health piece is real for so many people, and it was before COVID. So I think this is a critical time right now to be talking about disability in the conversation around diversity, probably now more than ever.
It really an excellent point and clearly resonates with the people watching our live cast here today. So tell us more, Ruth, about your story of hiding and unhiding.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was born in the days before sonograms. And so my limb difference, my missing hand, was a surprise to my parents. And lucky for them, I think it was a time also that not only was I a surprise and there was no information on sonograms, there wasn't a lot of information about limb differences. I might even argue there was no information about limb differences. And so as my parents navigated that space really on their own, they met a nurse in the hospital when I was born that said, you'll take this little girl home and you'll treat her as you would any other child. You'll love her and treat her as normal. And that's exactly what they did. They truly encouraged me to try everything, to try things, to fail at things, to overachieve at things, sometimes to underachieve at things. And I will say that was probably one of the greatest gifts. Part of it, though, is we didn't talk about some of the feelings that were coming up, especially around the teenage years. And when I was 13, and I talk about this in my book, when I was 13, I started a new co-ed high school. And it was the first time that I really started it. I remember it before kind of therapy and things, that I remember starting to think about feeling different and it's, it's a common age where when you're an adolescent, you want to fit in. You want to be separating from your parents and individuating from your parents. You want to be making friends. And I got on a yellow school bus to go to my new school, and I started to notice that people were looking at me and noticing my hand. And my impulsive reaction was to hide it and to tuck it into my front left pocket. I had no idea that for the next 25 years, hiding and being seen as normal would come to run my life. And I hid it from everyone. I think probably not only did I hide it physically, but I hid it in terms of talking about it. I can tell you part of my book process was reaching out to some of my closest friends from college and talking about me and the hiding and how we didn't talk about it. And it was kind of an off limits topic to so many. And so that became kind of my routine, is hiding. And what I found, Everett, as I started to explore this topic, is that so many of us are hiding parts of ourselves from everyone. There's actually a statistic I quote in my book. It was a Deloitte study from 2013 that 61% of people hide a part of themselves in the workplace. We hide everything. We hide the way we look. We hide the way we speak. We hide things around our mental health. We hide our education. And so if people are hiding, I can tell you firsthand that it's exhausting and lonely.
Oh. It's got to impact all facets of your life. Like, I mean, the obvious one is like, okay, you're seeing boys and you're like, so you're hiding it away, but also it's a job, personal friendships, even relationships with your parents, I imagine, even though they were like, wanting to just encourage you to do absolutely everything.
Well, when you're hiding, you're constantly worrying and forecasting next steps so that you don't get found out. So I think that's one of the toughest pieces when you hide part of yourself. Yes, you're worrying and forecasting, and you're not being present because you're always worried about someone finding out. So you're not actually ever really enjoying the moment because you're always worried.
Wow. So let's take this to the point where, like, when and how did you reach the point of going, wait, I've got to stop hiding and I need to unhide, is the phrase that you use repeatedly in the book. And how'd you get to that point?
It's a great question. It was a lot of attempts. I will say that every time I left a situation, for example, when I left high school, I promised myself that I wouldn't hide in college. And yet the first day I showed up, pretty much that first week, I started hiding it again, thinking I'll just hide it for a while and then I'll get to know people and then I'll start to unhide it. And that didn't work. I had a job where I hid it and kind of didn't do well at the job and promised myself after that I wouldn't hide it. And even then, I thought I wasn't hiding it because at one point in my professional career, I made a decision to stop hiding. And yet I was still hiding because I wasn't talking about it. I was definitely hiding in my professional life. I have hidden in my personal life for years, beyond the professional life. But I will say at one point during the professional life, I said, I'm going to stop hiding. And I think that's why I chose to work with young people, because young people will ask you and then they kind of move forward with it. It also connects you because they're struggling with feeling different. And so they would often say, Miss Ruth, what happened to your hand? They would want to know about it. Then they tell me what was going on with them. And so in my professional life, it felt like there was some progress. In my personal life, it actually took meeting someone who showed me how to love that part of myself that I thought was so unlovable for so long. He taught me how to actually look at my hand, how to touch it, how to be with it, and to recognize that it was part of my full self. It wasn't detached. It wasn't my hand and then there was me. It was how am I one person? And as little by little, as I started getting comfortable with my hand and noticing it and knowing how to take care of it. And I know I talk in the book about that even neglecting it to the point of it had frostbite. It still gets frostbite every year. He taught me how to learn to love myself. And as that started to happen, I started to let other people in too. And I started to become freer with myself and with how I showed up. And then I got really lucky. I think once you start accepting parts of yourself, it's almost like blinders start to come off, because I had such blinders around disability and not wanting to be seen as disabled, not wanting to be seen as different, not wanting to be seen as less than. And as those blinders came off, I started to see other people with disabilities and want to engage and wanting to talk about the experience. And I met a woman in a Duane Reade, and saw that she had one arm and started talking to her about it. And what was amazing is she introduced me to this whole community called the Luckyfin Project. And I had never heard of the Luckyfin Project in my, at that point, almost 50 years. And I didn't know that. I thought I was alone. I really thought that I was one of the only people, not just with a limb difference, but that was hiding it to such extreme. And what I found out is I wasn't alone, and that I went home. I'll never forget. I went home. I rushed home after meeting her, looked online, and the Luckyfin Project had, at that point, 30,000 members to this Facebook community. Now it's over 70,000 with people. It is a wow. It's the idea of building community and realizing you're not alone. And when I saw the faces of the young people who, I saw these hands that were mine. Like, I saw their faces and then I looked at their hands. Then I saw adults who had limb differences. And what was amazing, Everett, is that this group held a picnic every year and outside of Detroit. And I went and I started to connect with the people that looked like me and I wasn't the first person who invented hiding. I wasn't the first person to worry about how was I going to carry a glass of wine, try to take a selfie, and carry a plate of food. I wasn't the first person to try to overachieve. It was really a super powerful experience in the shared experience, and also in being able to be a role model for the young people and for the parents, because it gave me, I think it really provided me with an opportunity to see what my parents, I wish they had had. I know my father is a huge supporter of mine, and I'm so grateful. I also wish my mom had been alive, because she passed away thinking that she caused this. And that isn't accurate. There's a whole community of people with my exact hand out there. So it's super powerful to find your people and to find your community. And then I started to share out my experience with others, and more people started sharing their experiences with me.
So, and you serve on the board of the Luckyfin Project now, is that right?
I do. How could I not? It's such an amazing group of people and community, and and raising awareness that, limb differences affect, at some statistics I've read, are 1 in 3,000 births. So how could I not serve on a board of an organization that gave me so much community and so much kind of connection? Yeah, I believe in their work 100%.
Well, let me bring up the reminder that the book is available now on Amazon. You can pick up the Kindle version for 99 cents. The paperback is there as well. Definitely encourage you to get your copy of Single-Handedly: Learning to Unhide and Embrace Connection. I think you'll find it very powerful. Ruth, what I'd like to do is get into some questions that people are asking. And let me just kind of pull some up. First, I did want to share this. I suspect you know this gentleman. Paul said, "So proud of you. I've learned so much about you from your book, things I didn't know until I read it." And isn't that part of the book process? Like, kind of crazy, right?
He's not alone. I learned things about myself. The book process is absolutely a cathartic process. It is almost like intense therapy, because you're digging deep, and you know that by digging deep, your impact could be greater if you go there, rather than continuing to hide and stay behind the feelings, digging deep. So yeah, he and I talked after he had a chance to read it. And I think the feeling I got from my father was he didn't know how hard it was. And I didn't share that before.
I think that is the challenge when you start to include biographical information, right, in our books, is inevitably things are going to come out that not everyone's aware of, especially like this is so personal, right? It's not like just sharing part of our author bio or something like that. This is just so incredible.
What's amazing, I will say, just to add to that, what's amazing is that once you do start sharing out that information, people feel comfortable and start sharing information back, right? I was literally just in the airport last week, and someone I was sitting next to, and I was talking about my book and the work I'm doing, started crying. because they're hiding part of themselves. And that happens more and more as I start to share out the work I'm doing. And the truth is, what's great about it is that it's connection, because the key to connecting with people is unhiding and sharing ourselves.
And being, it's part of being real, right?
Real.
Especially in this Instagram world, right? Where everyone's got to take their pictures, but only when they're in the most exotic locations or the fancy restaurant or whatever. And, we just don't tend to post pictures of real life, right? It's always the highlight reel.
I'm probably guilty of that.
We all are. No, I mean, we all are. It's like, I'm not going to take a picture of me. Like we're moving everything around our house in preparation for finally redoing our floors after 22 years. I'm not going to take a picture of me moving furniture, but I might take a picture of the new floor, right? It's like,
I probably would. Natural. Yeah, but Everett, I might challenge you to take a picture of the real, like the moving of the furniture, because they make good selfies. As people know me, I love a good selfie. So
I love it.
I'll post it. That's for sure.
I love it. I was also, you highlight something. We talk, it's very easy for us in talking about publishing and stuff. Most of our clients are publishing books because they understand the authority it brings, right? The expert status and how they're going to leverage it within speaking and within their brand. And those are all incredibly powerful reasons to do a book. But what doesn't get talked about is the internal change that happens in the process. Like, Ruth, you must have been a little bit wigged out the first time you saw your book on Amazon, right?
Yeah. The first time I saw the cover with my face on it, but
that's right. And it's funny. We, to those watching, we often discourage people from putting their headshots on their book. But there are times when it's exactly what needs to be done. And this, I'm just so happy and so proud of the way this one turned out, Ruth. You did, it's beautiful. And then seeing your book for the first time on the world's largest bookstore, and then watching the launch go through today, and then the benefits you talked about the writing process being this contemplative kind of therapeutic thing. And also even just professionally causing this increased clarity of thought in the process, right? You start to think of your things, it just stuff comes out. And that's one of the things I think is great about Kathy's process as a writing coach. Again, plugging Kathy Fyock as a writing coach, she does a phenomenal job of helping to bring that out.
Right. No, because I think what you hit the nail on the head. I think the book started out, right, as a calling card for, it was going to be a DEI and HR professional calling card. And that was to build my speaking business. And what I realized as I was writing it was absolutely a therapeutic process, but it could also have impact on those who were hiding. Those who have disabilities who feel like they hide, those who have other challenges and differences where they feel like they hide. And that could open up a whole door for people so they would feel less alone. And then the idea of how could we bring that into the workplace so that we create these workplaces that we all want, which is where you're included, you're seen, you're heard, and you belong. How could that be the greater impact? And how could we really start a movement, Everett, around unhiding? Because it's time to unhide. So how do we do that? And that's what the book has become, is it's a tool to get us starting conversation and to sparking conversation around unhiding.
All right. And on that note, let's go to some of these questions. In fact, Kathy asked a great one. So let's use hers. How many of us are hiding some part of who we are? We used to describe these as our skeletons, and depression, alcoholism, disability. There's so many other things that we're hiding, right? Whether it's just insecurities, the mental health, the other mental health things, all of that, right?
It's funny. There's two reactions to that. One is that number of 61% of people are hiding. I actually think is higher in terms of a number, because I think people don't always talk about hiding as something, they've kind of accepted it in themselves. It's almost like become a norm, or they don't want people to know, so they're not going to even own it. It's almost like denial. I have met people who tell me I never forget someone coming up after one of my speeches and said, I don't talk at work. And I said, why? And he's like, because I have a stutter. I don't want anyone to know about my stutter, so I don't speak. Well, how are you then being part of your team? How are you being part of that culture if you're not sharing yourself? I've had people share that they hide their mental health journeys that they're on, and they're grateful that I am sharing where I am and that I still struggle. I've had people say that they don't share their age at work. They don't share their education background because sometimes it isn't at where the Ivy League or top schools need to be for it to be seen as competitive in the workplace. I was on the phone a few months ago with a woman who told me she's not even talking about that her child has a mental health challenge because she's afraid that people will, on Zoom, think that she can't control her child. And the second is she says, and they're going to judge that I have to go to medical appointments all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think we have created this space in the workplace, being behind a screen has its advantages. It also has its disadvantages because we can hide different parts of ourselves in different ways. And then the anxiety, what I'm starting to see is the anxiety of having to return to work. What does that look like?
This is perfectly, Wendy had asked, and Wendy specializes and just wrote and launched a phenomenal book about flexible work arrangements. And of course, remote work comes into that. So it asked, how do you think virtual work has changed this conversation about disabilities?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think for a long time, people with disabilities have advocated for different work styles to be able to work in different locations, et cetera. So we were able to, for a long time, we said no to that for the accommodation of working from home or working differently. And what COVID and the last 2.5 years have proved is almost overnight, we could all shift to that. So in that sense, COVID and virtual working have been a good thing in terms of being more flexible, being able to work in different ways, finding those accommodations that people need. I will say we still have work to do around how we're making that accessible for everyone. Because now people are being asked to come back to work. And people are also being asked, if they can't come back to work, needing to give a health reason or a medical reason why. And so I think we still have a lot of work to do around what does disability in the workplace do? What can we do for people with disabilities in the workplace? I also think what we are starting to see, one of the other positives, is the heightened conversation around mental health in the workplace for the first time, and realizing that people may need supports, that some of the mental health and the neurodiversity parts of people's lives are real. For the first time, people are acknowledging it and talking about it and bringing in speakers and showcasing that it's something where we need to have conversation and build the conversation. I've seen more disability employee resource groups and affinity groups start to bubble up and start to look at especially the mental health piece of work.
So you brought up a couple things. I mean, there's a lot in that. One is you're talking about even how this impacts the reasonable accommodation process, right, of under the Americans with Disabilities Act. You don't know this, but in a prior life, I was a vocational rehab counselor, and I would work with injured workers to help them get back to work. And remote work was almost never part of that conversation. Now it's going to always be part of that conversation, and how different that is. I also wonder if Zoom has given people, like, for instance, I see you now, or actually, I don't know if you're in your home office or office, but so many times now we start seeing people in their home environment, and sometimes it is with things going on that reveal personal details, whether those be disabilities or difficulties that just weren't apparent before. And so that is interesting how the remote has worked with that. Wendy also asked another question, and she said, as a mom, how do you suggest we talk with children about disability? I mean, this is a bit important question.
It's absolutely an important question. And I think just to circle back for 1 second to the work piece, I will say that we need to continue to expand how we think about people with disabilities. There's kind of this word that people say is it's the 8 F's that with people with disabilities, we categorize them into the friendly jobs that we have, the filing jobs we have, the food jobs we have. And how do we expand that conversation so that people with disabilities, we can actually tap into their strengths and how they're thinking? I know as somebody who was a manager and leader for a long time, the people I craved on my team were the people who were solution focused and out of the box thinkers. So I will just put that plug in terms of thinking about work differently and thinking about mindset differently and mental health differently. In terms of young people, and I definitely have had my share of working with young people. As I said, one of the greatest gifts of working with young people is that they ask. There is no filter. They typically ask out of curiosity and kindness. And often what we do as adults is if our child asks, is we hush them or shush them. Oh, you shouldn't ask that. Oh, you shouldn't talk about that. And so we've done 2 things to kids when we do that. We tell them it's not okay to be curious. So we shut that down. And we make disability a taboo topic by saying, don't ask about it. And so I encourage parents and young people to ask questions out of curiosity and kindness, because that's truly where we then get to know about someone, and respecting boundaries. If someone doesn't want to answer why they have a disability, it's okay. But it's okay for kids to ask. I also think it's important to encourage young people to look at all difference, because it's not just about disabilities. We are all different. When kids ask me about my hand, I often say, this is the way I was born. And then I say, because we all have things that are different about us. And I say, this is just how I was born that was different. Some things are external and some things are internal.
All right. Hey, you sent me some cool pictures, and these all come out of the book. And I thought we could look at them, and you could just walk us through them briefly. There's just a few, but I just thought this was super touching.
My parents bringing me home from the hospital. And again, they were navigating this whole world. I was not only I was their first child, and I was a child with a disability. So you can see almost them holding on like carefully, like, oh, who's going to take her? Like to put her in the car. Yeah.
I mean, and think of the challenges. Like I remember the panic when they gave us our son, our firstborn, to bring home. Like, wait, you're trusting us to take this child home, and where's the instruction manual and all of that? Compound that with, okay, there's some differences here that are going to change the way things go forward.
Especially when you have no one to talk to about it. They were alone. The doctors didn't have information. There were no support groups.
Yeah, there's no Facebook groups, no support groups.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
All right. So this one's a little bit later.
Oh, yeah. This is what hiding looked like. I would find any way to hide. This was a trip to the Bahamas in my freshman year of college with my friend Shannon. And this was me hiding. I would hide it in my pocket. I would hide it with long sleeves. I would hide it under hats. I would hide it anywhere I could hide it that nobody would see it. Definitely in a picture, but also in real life time.
Yeah. This picture is a little bit more triumphant.
Yes.
So speaking in front of TEDx, and definitely not hiding.
No, and proud of not hiding, getting to a place. I mean, I think that's the biggest gift that I've given myself is the freedom from hiding. Because when I stopped hiding, I absolutely found freedom.
Oh. And then another one, not hiding.
And Victoria Falls in Africa. Yeah. It was a moment of seeing a rainbow, which is a gift, and then realizing the freedom of travel and culture and experience and just adventure, because that's part of what I love is the adventure of travel.
I love it. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for your time here today. Thanks for writing a terrific book. I actually had several stories I was going to ask you about, but we've gone all over the place with great stuff that you didn't need that. People just have to get the book. they'll have to get the book to learn these stories and also to learn about inclusion in the workplace. So Ruth, anything else you want to wrap up with before I send us out?
No, I think it's been a gift. Again, the writing process is cathartic. So for those people who are watching and want to write a book, do it. It's a place, and hire someone to help you. That's the beauty of the book, is the irony of the title. Because when we think about single-handedly, we think about doing things alone, we think about strength, and we think about being single. And the truth is, I could never have unhidden alone. I tried so many times to unhide on my own. And it was really through meeting someone. It was about finding community, and it was about sharing my story. And that's how I unhid.
Wonderful. Ruth, thank you again. And a reminder, you can pick up Ruth's book on Amazon. The Kindle version is 99 cents today. And I would encourage you to do that. Pick up the paperback as well. And this would be a fantastic gift for anybody who is dealing with any kind of hiding. And that's the challenge, is lots of people are hiding all sorts of things, but also in the work environment, where inclusion and diversity needs to have this as part of the discussion. So I would encourage people to pick up that. Now, if we can help you anyway here at Ignite Press, please reach out. You can actually schedule a complimentary book consultation with us if you go to ignitepress.us. That's ignitepress.us. Also, if you're looking for a phenomenal book coach, Kathy Fyock is watching the livecast now and helped Ruth and has helped a lot of our clients with their books. You can find her at kathyfyock.com. So encourage you to do that as well. So there you go. Thank you again for joining us on the livecast. It is great to have you here. Thanks for being part of it. And let's get these books out. Let's get your message out to the world. Thank you.